Now, once again, Raymond Arroyo.
Welcome back to The World Over. Happy Thanksgiving to all of you. He's a distinguished actor, best known for his work in The Wire as well as Treme. He's also a native son of New Orleans. He writes movingly about the redemptive power of faith and art in the wake of Hurricane Katrina. He joined me in our Washington studio to discuss his memoir recently, The Wind in the Reeds, a storm, a play, and a city that would not be broken. Here's my exclusive interview with the great Wendell Pierce. You grew up in Pontchartrain Park,
yes,
which is a beautiful enclave near Pontchartrain,
yeah,
Lake Pontchartrain. You called it a Black Mayberry.
Yeah.
Tell people what it was like and what happened in Katrina.
Pontchartrain Park is one of those classic American neighborhoods. It was post-World War II, sort of Levittown suburbia.
Right.
And Gentilly Woods was a white neighborhood.
Right.
And there was this ditch that separated us, and Pontchartrain Park was the separate but equal. And I like to say, and one of our pioneer neighbors said it, we took something ugly and made it beautiful, and it became an incubator for black talent. Dutch Morial, the first black mayor, his son Mark Morial, who is now the national president of the Urban League, Terrence Blanchard, Grammy Award winner.
Yeah, of course.
So it's historic. Multi-denominational churches.
Yes.
You had, Southern University at New Orleans. So it was a perfect place, but we were also in the deepest part of the flooding. And I knew that we owed it to our parents' generation who fought long and hard to make something beautiful like that. This Black Mayberry where I could go anywhere. So that's why I went back to my neighborhood of Pontchartrain Park and started to rebuild.
Now, you were an actor in New Orleans. We both went to the New Orleans Center of Creative Arts, NOCA, which is this institution that it was in a simple building on Perrier Street for a long time uptown. Now it's in this grand, fantastic facility that we never imagined.
I know.
But it really shaped you. You went on to Juilliard. You end up coming back post-Katrina in 2007, and you're in the classic Waiting for Godot.
Right.
And it was staged in New York, but then it was restaged in New Orleans in the lower Ninth Ward. Tell me about that production, because that is really the key that opens up a real understanding for you about the intermingling of art and faith and where you came from.
I realized that 20 years from now, someone's going to ask, Mr. Pierce, what did you do in New Orleans' darkest hour? I was an actor. I wanted to respond with my art. And so with the Classical Theater of Harlem, we did Waiting for Godot with 15,000 gallons of water, a rooftop coming out of it, and Estragon opening up, sitting on that rooftop, looking up. And it was every image we had seen that awful week of Katrina. And I wade in through the water and my bags. And so it was an image that was so clear. And we did it in the lower Ninth Ward, right where hundreds had died. Wow. And the play is about the desolation and the loss of these two men. They don't know who they are, where they came from. And out of that desolation, they realize that they're waiting for Godot, someone outside of themselves, some entity outside of themselves, but they have to find it within themselves ultimately to save themselves. That whatever they were looking for was already in them. That's ultimately where the classic play speaks to people. And there was the most cathartic moment of my life in the middle of that production, where New Orleanians who had come from across the city, rich and poor, white and black, old and young, the lawyer and the longshoreman, sitting next to each other, all affected by this great flood and disaster of New Orleans. And I turned to them in the play, and I just really was a moment where I just stepped out of character and turned to the audience and said, at this place, in this moment in time, all mankind is us. Let us do something while we have the chance. And it is in that moment where we all realized it's on us.
We have to do something.
We have to do something, and we have to come back. And that was the thing that made me realize the power of what I was doing, of that art. So many people to this day spoke to me and said, I saw that, and it gave me hope, it gave me vision. And it's that sort of transcendent nature of art that connected me to how we connect to our culture in New Orleans. It has always been a city and a place where that intersection between life and the people in themselves, that intersection is our culture and art. It's tangible, it's real, it's not just ethereal, it's not just a piece of entertainment. And that sort of transcendence also awoke me to what spirit and spirituality is all about. And it reminded me how much that was a part of my life too. So that one cathartic moment reminded me of the power of art, reminded me of the power of art and culture, specifically in New Orleans, how it was a thing of revelation, it was a thing of rebellion, a thing of insurrection, and also reminded me of the connection and the transcendent nature of, in a brief moment that you can have, mortals can have, where they find some immortality, and that transcendence is really about what spirit is, and it reminded me of the journey that I have when it comes to my faith and my spirit.
Yeah, no, and the Catholic faith here of your mother really pops on the pages of The Wind and the Reeds in a tangible way. There's a line, you were just talking about New Orleans, there's a line near the end of the book where you write, "The Bible tells us to walk in wisdom toward them that are without, redeeming the time." New Orleans tells us, no, don't walk, pull out your handkerchief, raise high your parasol, and dance.
Right.
And that really is the spirit of the city right there.
That is the spirit of the city. And you know, I tell people all the time, when you see a second line, remember it came out of, we have social aid and pleasure clubs.
Yeah,
you know,
that's right.
We understand the pleasure part. Oh, it's going to be a good party, it's going to be a good dance, it's going to be good music. But people forget about the social aid part. They are benevolent associations. Came out of an ugly time where people couldn't get burial plots. They couldn't go to and get health care. They couldn't go and to a certain and get insurance. So they pooled their money in these social aid and pleasure clubs. A benevolence association. Raymond, your daddy takes sick, we're gonna take care of you. Your mama passes away, we're gonna send her off nice. You know, that's what a second line is about. That's what a jazz funeral is about. It was showing that the community pooling their resources to make sure to take care of you, and pooling their resources to make sure they take care of you in spirit as well.
Now, I wept many times reading this, certainly because of the New Orleans connection, but there is that pulsing heart of family and history that beats through this whole book and through the city itself. And that people love the food, they love the music. That's just the overflow of the love and the family and the community that we know, that I think people who are visiting or outsiders don't quite get a full picture of. This book gives you a much fuller picture of it, particularly the lived black experience in New Orleans. From slavery, you talk about your great-grandfather, grandfather, right up until your mother, this educated woman, strong Catholic woman. Absolutely. Tell me about her. T.
We called my mother T because my older brother grew up with my first cousins. So we had T. Evelyn and T. Vaughn and T. May, all of these aunts, and the kids couldn't say Althea. So they just said T, and there's T. And so he called her T. And so when we came along, we said T as well. My mother was a devout Catholic. She loved the Blessed Mother. I remember during Lent we would read, we would say the Rosary every night in my father's study. A family that prays together stays together.
That's right.
My mother was also coming from the experience of African Americans and the ugliness of segregation and racism.
Even the segregated church.
Even the segregated church. We don't go to the church in our neighborhood because it was over in Gentlewood Woods.
I know right where it is.
And when she first went there, they said, "Excuse me, the Negro pews are in the back." She sat in my mother and father. Any church in the world is going to be on the right side, the fifth row, fifth pew. And she said, I walked out of that church going towards the back, you know, and I kept walking. I said, we'll never go back there again. And my mother, through that experience, and experiences that had happened to my grandmother, even worse, where, you know.
But it's amazing they kept their faith through that, and
the
she
reason,
was so devoted.
And the reason was, my mother always said, there's that which is man-made and that which is divine. We go to the church to connect with the divine, and man is fallible. So we were never taught to revere the men and women of the church. You respected the men and women of the church because they made a commitment and have been called by a vocation, but understand that they're fallible.
Right.
And we go to church to pray to God and to connect with that divinity. So we have always said, make that separation. And it's like, it's the same way we deal with America, you know, which is, you love this country and what this country can be, and you have to challenge it all the times when it doesn't live up to its own ideals. You know, I like to tell people it's like a drunken parent. I love you, but you got to stop drinking.
Your mother had this, you talked about her great devotion and her great faith. You have a really important thing that happens in your life. In 2012, you're doing Treme, and you really get to spend those last years of her life with her. What did she teach you in those moments?
I'll never forget. I'll never forget. Treme was a real godsend because it wasn't just a television show. It was a therapeutic thing for the people of New Orleans. But at the same time, I got to spend the last 4 years of my mother's life with her and be home. And I remember near the end, my mother told me, "Wendell, I'm dying." I said, "Oh no, listen, you know, all we have to do is get you back in shape." She said, "Wendell, I'm dying." She said, "You need to stay in church. You need to go to church." I am not a lapsed Catholic. I am. I have always been challenged with my faith ever since I was a little boy. Something that's lifelong. My confirmation name is Thomas, and I purposely picked Thomas. You know,
The doubter.
You know, the doubter.
Explain it to me. Let me touch.
Yeah, let me touch until I can touch his hand.
But and in that exchange, she told you, "Go. I want you to go to church." And you said, "Wait, I go to church."
I go to church, and she said, "No, I mean really go to church. I want you to understand that. I want you to go back to church and find, you know, your spirit again." So for my 50th birthday, with that in mind, I didn't want a big party or whatever. I said, I'm going to find, she loved the Blessed Mother, so I said, where were those visions? Oh, I thought of Guadalupe, I thought of different places. And I said, oh no, Fatima. And my birthday is December 8th.
Oh, the Immaculate Conception.
And it was on a Sunday that year, my 50th birthday. So I have this vision of going to Portugal and going to be
and you go alone on your 50th
I go alone.
birthday.
I wanted to go alone. And I realized I wanted to be with her. Ultimately, I wanted to be with her. I knew this was the place. And I thought, I had this vision of, you know, the 3 peasant children in the middle of a field.
Beautiful field,
you know, and
grotto.
there's going to be all of us going towards this pilgrimage. And I got there in this beautiful basilica with 100,000 people. And I couldn't believe it. And they take the Blessed Mother out once a year on...
They carry her out.
They carry her out for the procession. And this was special because it was the Immaculate Conception. It was on a Sunday. And so they brought her out. And as the procession is leading out, I look as a New Orleanian and I see all the pilgrims raising their handkerchiefs in the air.
Oh, wow.
As they say, this was actually after the Mass, they're bringing her back to her place, waving goodbye to the Blessed Mother. And in that moment, I knew that what I was really searching for was what my mother had asked me to search for. Find your faith again. I realized that I was also grieving. It's a year later after her death. And it was that moment that I knew that she was okay. And that she was like, I've given you everything you need. I've taught you everything you need in life. Be the man that I expect you to be. And I could say goodbye to my mother finally. I knew that's what the trip was all about, and that what my pilgrimage was all about.
In the book you say in that moment, she was telling me to keep the faith. I believe, T.
Yes.
I believe.
Absolutely. She was telling me to keep the faith. And I do believe. And the beautiful thing about it was I knew then there's an absolute presence to my mother. That was the thing. There wasn't an end to life. There's an ongoing presence that my mother is in me, and faith is in me, and God is in me.
I love how the book combines your art, it tells really your whole story, and we can only do touch on a few of these details, but you've got to read the book. It really is a moving experience, and certainly was for me. I love the connection you ultimately make between art and religion, and how important, how dependent art is on religion. You have a great line. Art is a kind of sacrament, you write. A sacrament that induces within you an experience of transcendence, a connection to the eternal, and of unity with all humanity.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I realize, that when we speak about art, we know what thoughts are to the individual when they lie awake at night and reflect on who they are, where they've been, who they hope to become. The forum of art is where we as a community reflect on where we've been, where we've failed, where we've triumphed, where we hope to go, where we declare our values and then we act on them. And it's in that communal experience that we find transcendence and a cathartic thing that is that's an essential part of what faith is about also. That it induces the behavior, and in that brief moment we understand how we are most like our Creator, and that we are all connected, and that we have to tap into that to realize the transcendent nature of our experience.
Yeah.
And that is what spirit and faith is all about.
Yeah, and how connected we all are.
And I have to be reminded of that happens in Mass. It is that,
yeah,
you know,
the bringing of
the communal. It
all comes together.
The Eucharist, you know, and that's what art was for me, and that's what the connection is to religion and faith. More than anything, faith is for me.
Well, you certainly experience it in this book. And I've seen it in your great characters over the years, and look forward to many more. Wendell Pierce,
really appreciate it.
Thank you for being here. The Wind in the Reeds, A Storm, A Play, and a City That Would Not Be Broken by Wendell Pierce is available at bookstores everywhere and online. It's a very moving read, one definitely worth your time.